Hey everyone, this is Nathan Felighty on Ag Uncensored coming back to you after a many month hiatus. I've decided to change things up a little bit. I think I kind of illustrated this a little bit ago on LinkedIn at the very least. But it's just going to be me talking about stuff in ag as I like to do anyways. And while I really enjoy interviewing people and talking about things from others' perspective on ag tech and ag in general, it's a lot to schedule. So I'm kind of starting a new series. I'll tie these in with my newsletter at times, but I'll be uploading these as well. And they're not going to be super duper long. They'll be fairly short and digestible. So here we go. My first one, as you can see by the title, is Small Farms Are the Answer to AgTech. So this kind of came from a conversation I actually had last week on another podcast from some local cohorts in the ag space in North Dakota. And the initial conversation was going to be, all these ag tech stories that I've had and dealt with, different companies, all the fun crap, some of which I've talked about before. But then it really got into this other phase of things, some things that have been on my mind for, easily over a decade, probably more, honestly. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that we all can see large farms getting larger. We can see even some medium-sized farms getting larger. We can see the push that all farms have to get bigger, else they might fail. They might go away. With the advent of people retiring out, dying in the next 20 years, this giant land grab, basically, transfer of wealth from boomers to X generation millennials, whatever. It's going to be huge, and there's going to be more land to grab up to rent. Farms will get bigger, blah, blah, blah. But that isn't good necessarily for the ag industry, in my mind, and where also I see things going in this kind of as whatever, make food great again or whatever, or food is health, these types of things, these initiatives for better nutritional value, things for, less processed foods. People want more organic and all this. They want more traceability, sustainability. Now, that's the fact for maybe a good chunk of Americans or people with, a higher level of wealth status. It's got to be affordable too. But this is the problem, these balances. So we are kind of stuck, though, because the incentive side of things is really bigger is better. You look at equipment, machinery, it gets bigger and bigger, more sophisticated. It's meant for large farms. Everything is. Now, sure, there's specialty size. There are smaller machines that can do things, smaller things. That's not the point. But we don't in the commodity side of ag, we don't really see that. You see it maybe more on the specialty side, and even the ranching side. You probably see more of that. But we're ingrained in kind of most of ag. It's big tractors, big combines, big corn, big soybean yields, big wheat yields, all this fun stuff. And we're at a point that we have enough. We're growing enough. The whole feed the world by 2050 was a farce of, I won't even say lies. They just didn't get it. The people that put all that together, they didn't look at the demographics that are happening in China, places in Europe, here even. The economic struggles of different, the bottom parts of the world are, it's getting tough. People are deciding to have less kids. Even people that are wealthier are saying, I don't know if I want to bring 3 kids, 4 kids into the world. And you're having this kind of dichotomy switch. I see, we've kind of lumped, at least in commodity agriculture, I'm kind of focusing there because other sides are, this isn't smallholder farms in, say, Africa or Asia, although this could benefit them if the right thing happens here. Um, I'm talking, yeah, kind of normal commodity farms in the modern world. And like I said, there's a separation going to happen because all this land's going to come up. Even commodities, the pricing, they're not going to get to the point where most can really survive off of it. Heck, most can't now. They have to have side incomes. Maybe wife works in town for something, in the bank, or heck, even does accounting or whatever, something. Or maybe it's vice versa, the wife's farming, husband's doing XYZ. It doesn't really matter. Only like the really large farms can sustain the whole family really anymore. And that's going to vary in size depending where we're at. But I've been talking about a little more lately, in realms of ag tech, it's been honed in to be built for the larger farm, for even the mid-size to larger farm, the basically, 1 million plus gross revenues. And, if you look at the demographics from the USDA, and I think it's similar in other places, really you're talking the US, probably Canada, maybe Western Europe. Even Western Europe's a whole different beast. So I don't even know if I'd count that. Maybe Australia would be a better example. And then there's other pockets around the world. It's something like 300,000 farmers out of the 2 million that are out there, according to the taxes, are they do 95% of the production of agriculture, especially in commodities. It's probably about accurate because specialty farms in the West Coast and the South, that's a little different segment, and the acreages are weird. So, but the revenues are super high, so maybe that is in that demographic. We'll just say 300,000 farmers do 95% of the production. Well, how it's really structured in the U.S. is you might be a 10,000 acre farm, but you have 10 entities. So you might have 10 entities of 1,000, acres, and each one of those might be right below that million mark, or maybe a little bit above. It really depends. So that kind of messes with the statistics, and then you have this issues of how they're all connected and combined. You might have a entity next to it, the cousin owns, but it's not part of that farm, but they kind of work together. In the future, these things are all going to kind of coalesce together, and they kind of do already. It's really hard to put those statistics together, so I don't really blame anyone for not being imperfect. Some people don't even want to admit how it all comes together anyways. That's kind of the point why there's multiple entities. Either way, they're going to coalesce. They're going to buy more land either separately and then farm it together or something like that. And there's going to be a lot of small farms that are kind of like, what do we do now? And I think there's a unique opportunity for AgTech to think about this, because the large farms that do 95% of, say, the production, if you really dig probably into the math and combine the entities together out of that 300,000 that actually work together, you're actually probably talking about, I'd say, or 10,000 farms, like that are cohesive farms that are multiple entities even together, but they're one farm. They all combine together, all plant together, all spray together, all store grain together, stuff like that. There's probably 10,000 that probably do 50% of the production. Now, if you actually broke out the entities, maybe you're talking that's actually 50,000 farms. Either way, if it's 50,000, that's still like 50% of the production. That's an insane amount. That's 200 million acres, approximately, out of the 400 million that is tillable land, or arable land, however you want to say it. If you actually break it down to the 10,000, that's going to get smaller over time. The 50,000 for sure will. Then you have like these 250,000, which if you combine the entities there, maybe it's actually closer to 100,000. And a lot of those, while they're maybe using, auto guidance, some basic things from the ag tech world, I mean, they're probably using different, some of the same chemistries and genetics. Heck, some are doing biologicals and things like that. I'm not really counting those things, although those are very important. But the rest are going to get kind of shifted to the side. But then again, there's more of them. and there's a want for food to be better. Well, the large farms are going to stick to kind of how they're built, which is commodities, large scale farming, large scale ranching too. Sometimes they're combined. They're feeding the cows, they're growing the food, feeding the cows, all that stuff. And while the ag tech industry has been so focused on that, efficiencies, we got to make sure that 10 combines can talk to each other. 3 planters can talk to each other. All this data from all these large farms, these brand new equipment. They're the only ones that buy new equipment anyways, that has all this new tech, are these top tier farms. They're not going to go away, but there's also, this is a whole different conversation. And one I'll get into is commodity farming in the US is going to shift. It's already being talked about by others. It's been talked about for a long time for many, but it's really coming to fruition, especially with some of the more recent politics of the world. Stuff is going to get switched to where it's cheaper to grow it. It's going to be cheaper to grow it in South America or maybe Africa, if that can expand. There's a lot of infrastructure issues there, but there's a lot of people there, and there's a lot of food, basic food. They just need more food there. So they're going to be kind of in the ways that we were before. We just need to grow more of it. It's not about quality, it's about quantity. Those areas of the world that are expanding need that more. India needs that more. Parts of Asia needs that more. Parts are less. So, that's a whole nother thing. But for the US, I think you're only going to be able to farm the major commodities. Your corn, wheat, beans. We'll just kind of stick to the major 3. There's other parts in there too with some few other crops. They're the only ones that are going to be able to do it, larger farms. What that number is, I don't know. Everyone's a little different. Some people own a lot more land, more equipment. Some are leveraged up to high heaven. I don't know. But there's just going to be this big demographic of people that are, I'm going to say 1,000 acres or less, that they have to switch things up. And some will find ways because, like I said, they own their equipment, they own all their land. They can kind of stick into the game and play it, and they can play it fine. No one's going to stop them. How they want to use AgTech, I don't know. Some will just kind of filter on as much as they can until they can't anymore not using it. Really, my main thought is, where's the opportunity for the small farms? Are they just going to stick and twiddle their thumbs? And where's AgTech going to sit? If, maybe the acreage is up and maybe you'll make the same amount of money from them, but even adoption for them is limited to some of this stuff. I think of variable rate and more intensity soil testing, things of that nature, just more of it. They're more apt to. Maybe the retailer's helping them. They have an agronomist on staff, or they have something like that. They're being taken care of by a large group of trusted advisors, really. They're running like a business. It's a whole different dichotomy, but AgTech is focused on that. It still can do those things. It's already built. We built it for that, and we kind of forgot about the others. Like, how do we help them? And now some of this tech is cheaper to develop and build than it was before. But it can't be just in the normal ways we think. I think that's what I'm trying to say here, is we can't think of it as just AgTech for AgTech's sake to help increase efficiencies, increase production, yield, all that stuff, be more efficient in accounting and all that stuff. Is like, no, that's done, kind of. You're just fine-tuning the process. Where the opportunity is to think like how small farms could be. And for me, it comes down to kind of thinking, I want to farm again. I wouldn't do any of this stuff if I could just farm, or maybe I would. It's always been my dream. So I've always thought, how would I do it? Well, because of situations, I didn't get into it younger as I was hoping. Did a little bit, but then stuff happens. I can't get up to those large acreages where I'd need to. I don't even, well, maybe I could. I don't necessarily want to, though. I also live closer to a larger city in Fargo, North Dakota. I live outside of it. Where some of the land I could do around here, probably not. Maybe in some other parts of the state, maybe even back home where I grew up in central North Dakota, maybe in northern North Dakota where I lived a little bit. There's a little opportunity there, but I don't want to do commodities, and I have knowledge in tech. It's like, what do I do? And then how could that relate to where the industry goes, where others could follow? And it's coming to this. I want to put you in a scenario here to kind of get you to think. So there's an area that I maybe could farm. It's about 800 acres. It's 5 quarter sections about. Some's a little different minded, but it's about that. Nice stuff. Lucky that if that's even a possibility. Might be, might not, don't know. But that is my best hope. So it's 5 quarters, which means there's 10 80-acre parcels. Now, would I start farming those 10 different ways? No. You start small, get back into it, all that. But I wouldn't want to grow the same staple crops up there, which is really wheat and canola, barley. If anything else, you throw some soybeans in there. There's a little bit of other things, but that's really it. Those crops are fine and they might still be farmed. But that's the commodity. And the commodity holds you back because you're more dictated by a whole outside set of circumstances. Now, North Dakota is lucky. We might be very lucky. It might be why North Dakota Ag sticks around and helps exceed other states way faster. The tech adoption up here is already the highest in the country. We have fast internet. If climate change the way it's happening, we're going to be fine here. Down south, I don't know. Your land prices, weather, droughts, all this stuff, from irrigation, the Ogallala Aquifer to other stuff, hurricanes, all this. I wouldn't want to farm in the southern portion of the country. It's going to be tough, I think, going forward. Maybe that's just me. So I think we're in a safe spot. Anyways, but getting back to the point, other places could do this. We grow a lot of more direct food products, food crops here. Potatoes, sugar beets, edible beans, a lot of different varieties of edible beans. Think of blacks, kidneys, turtles, pintos, pinks, all sorts of stuff there. Sunflowers, oil and confectionery. There's 20 other things. There's markets for it. And that's what I've been thinking here. Other places have to get in to follow kind of what North Dakota's done, if they can, is open some new markets, give some opportunities to smaller farms staying farm by getting to more specialty crops. But we also treat some of these more specialty commodities like normal commodities. It's kind of in the system, the framework of the normal farm. How AgTech can help here is fine-tuning this process. So I'll use pinto beans as an example. My cousin farms them on the old family farm back home. He's the one that farms. Well, right now he grows them and brings them to contracts them with the local elevator. There's other places to contract, but they specialty manage pinto beans. There's specialty ways to do it. They market, maybe they sell to ADM. ADM sells it to Frito-Lay for bean dip. That's kind of how that process works. There's also sunflowers, giant sunflowers, if you ever heard of them. They buy confectionery sunflowers, they process them, package them, put seasoning on them, and at your local base, your most MLB baseball stuff, that's where your sunflowers come from. But they're acted like commodities. What if technology can help the smaller farms? I don't want to say take out the middleman. It's maybe help the middleman, or it also becomes the middleman. I think the traceability, the intensity of how it's farmed, where it's maybe not just for yield, it's on the quality standpoint, where everything exactly is. That's what people want to see. Maybe a group of farmers that do pinto beans say, maybe one of them does it. It doesn't take a lot to make a crap ton of bags of pinto beans to sell somewhere. But it's not the $1-2 bag you buy at the grocery store. You want to make it a $10 bags, a big $10 bag that a specialty restaurant makes, or a Mexican restaurant makes, and they do their own stuff with it. That's what you're going for, not the cheap stuff. You're going for quality. You're going for the story. Make a story out of the farm too. Many are doing that in their different ways in social media and all that. Let's create a brand around it. But we need the tech to tie it. We need the tech brand to tie to the crop, to the geolocation, to all the attributes of the field. What's sprayed on it, when it's tilled, when it's not, if it is at all. Cover crops, when they're going in, what's not going in, what type, what kind, the quality, the protein, the oil content, where exactly is that? All these really fine-tuned things. We need software and tools that kind of, and sensors that bring that all together in a place so that it can be branded and packaged individually for maybe it's that individual farm or it's grouped, and they need ways to market it and sell it and showcase it or connect to the people that can process it further, or they need the tools and the ability to process it themselves, sell it out themselves. There are farms that have done this in other places of the country. They've kind of done the whole chain of events. There's one farm in Montana that's done this, and now they have their own little restaurants selling bread and making bread and having other meals using the wheat and bread that they made. I can't remember the name of it. There's other opportunities like that. That's where small farms can really differentiate themselves, so that maybe on 1,000 acres with some different, maybe 10 different crops like I'm talking about, I could market each one. I know specifically where they are. It's a specialty type of wheat that's made for baking for this place, and I contract with them. Maybe the yield's not 100 bushels an acre. Maybe it's 40, but I get 50 bushels or $50 a bushel for it. That's what we need to think about. Now, there's not room for everybody in that space either. I don't know what the limits of the market would be there. That's for capitalism to decide. But there's a lot of opportunity there. But the tech isn't fine-tuned to do that. We need AgTech to fine-tune, or maybe be what is out there now, be able to also shift to that possibility for smaller farms to get into the specialty side of different crops. And maybe that 1,000-acre farm, maybe it's not, 100% of it is in that. Maybe it's just 100 acres of it. There's maybe a guy's got, let's just say a quarter, and he's like, I want to do some of these specialty things, but I have limited and I don't really need to do too much. I'll split it into 4 fields. So maybe, 140 is X crop, 140 is another crop, so forth. But he's market those specialty. He's sending them to a special processing. They're maybe branded off of him. There's a QR code, maybe it's barley or something made for beer. That QR code's on a can of beer. Whether people will buy extra for that, I know that's maybe a bad example, but I think that can exist. An element of that can exist for small farms, so they can survive off of that acreage that they're doing, and maybe they can get down to a few hundred acres and rent off the other to the large farm. Maybe that's the goal too, is there are tools out there to help them rent and showcase their farm, but maybe they've farmed it in a way that's unique to them and sustainable in all these different levels, and they're only going to let someone else rent that will do the same thing, so that the value is more. So you need these tools to showcase that value and to hold that true to maybe the larger farm that also is doing some specialty marking with it. But you don't need that acreage because you're focusing on this more smaller specialty stuff. We need the tools to work within that. Some of it's there, kind of. You can kind of do it. I think there's just a lot of other opportunity in the ag tech world to hone in on that idea, to help farmers bridge, to help ag businesses bridge that too, because they're going to have to deal with it too. Crop insurance would have to deal with that. The local retailer, the local XYZ, they would have to deal with these shifts too. And they need the tools to differentiate themselves as well. Like I said, maybe half of their business is just normal commodity stuff. Maybe their other half is really helping farmers fine-tune this kind of specialty world. Maybe part of it's ag tourism. Maybe it's a mix of all these other things. I could talk on and on about ideas and scenarios here, but that's the gist of it. Is people in general want more higher quality food. They want it to be distributed better. They want it to be more nutrient dense. They want it to taste better. They want it from somebody. They want to know who it comes from. They want to know where it came from. They want to know the whole storyline of some of the ingredients, at the very least, are the main ones. This is where small farmers, I think, can evolve towards. They can have incomes, maybe they're even greater than some of the large ones if they do it right. Some will, some won't. But they need more of the tools to do these things. And there is a lot of opportunity there. And the people want it. And that's the other thing. They want it, but they need a place where they can see it too. A farmer might need a software that shows all this data they have, but that the consumer can see it. a place where they can see it and be like, oh, it's this guy, and I can connect to the guy. That's a thing too. There's this whole social kind of connection point between normal consumer and farmer that could be done, but it's not really a thing right now. This normal social media stuff doesn't work as good that way. It kind of does, kind of doesn't. There's opportunity there, and I got a ton of ideas there too, but that's where my thinking is. If AgTech wants to stick to just the large commodity farms, you're gonna slowly grab on adoption, but you're never getting the smaller farms anyways. But the opportunity has been not there as thought of. It's like, well, they don't have the money. They're not going to do these things. They're not going to do this. They're not going to afford this. They're not going to do this. They're not going to write big checks. Blah, blah, blah. But they have quantity, but they want to make quality. It's kind of this inverse. We have to think of that and build towards that, support that, create some of those tools. That's where my head's going. All the large commodity farms they need to exist as well. There is a shift here, but we need to understand and realize where it's going before we don't, and chaos ensues, which no one wants that. But yeah, maybe also we need a little chaos to shift. I don't know. That's my thoughts for today. Kept a little shorter. That's my goal. Maybe once in a while, I'm going to put this into my newsletter. As I said, maybe it's a separate thing. Maybe it's going to be about something someone else had to say on whether through news or some other newsletter or some other topic. But this is where I'm going in the podcast going forward. I can control it. Simpler, easier. I don't schedule shit. There's my uncensored part for the day. And I'm going to get a little more real too. But I don't want to put anyone down. And I'm going to be critical of some groups out there that need to change or shift. But really the focus is making this stuff work, making the technology actually useful for people. Not just the fun storyline, the fun marketing line. I think it's changing. It was there, and I still talk about that, but I'm using that almost as my anger from the past of seeing how it should have done better. It should have been better. It should have been vetted better. But also that kind of feeds the change of saying, let's figure this out. I'll be pressing a little harder than others. Just be real, be realistic, talk the truth, none of the bullshit. Everyone's tired of it. They want AgTech to work. They want, in a slew of different ways. Don't alienate ag if you're listening and you're not in it, but you want to get into it. If you're in ag, but aren't traditionally from that area and you want to do some big things, don't alienate it. Walk slow. Try. Ask before you try. That's probably the simplest thing. That's all anyone wants. Everyone wants to help because there's a lot of uncertainty going forward in ag in a lot of different ways. And it doesn't matter who's running the country or not. It's still going that way. Things are going to change. We need to all coalesce together to keep everyone's boots on the ground so we don't float off into the distance and kind of lose the opportunity that's here. Other countries are adopting things really fast, and that's great as well. There's opportunity there as well. But it all has to work symbiotically too. Maybe we just have to stop the infighting. It's like, hey, large commodities. Yeah, maybe the US isn't for that anymore. Maybe a little bit, but that's not really the focus. Maybe that's what needs to change. It's like, you know what? That's okay. Let's focus that somewhere else and really help them and be part of their process. Well, here we do it a little differently, and other countries will do that too. That's what I'd like to see. Is that going to happen? Probably not, because that's not how people work. But you never know. Time will tell. Either way, I think that's a start to help smaller farms stay around, stay relevant. I think a lot of that tech can even evolve into even subsistent farming in other areas or really small farms. Because if those tools are honed into small areas, then maybe that real small farm in, I don't know, let's call it Indonesia, that's growing these specialty things, maybe they can help get their product marketed somewhere else in the globe because it's special and the story's good. No one's building those tools for them. Maybe we need to build them here. And this works in Europe too. Look at the population centers there. This model works there very well. And some people are kind of doing it. We just need to do more of it because that's where it's kind of going. So That's it for today. We'll see you later.